Oh, wow. Look, we're over on the side here, and there's I'm just gonna pull that away for a second. Hey guys, how you doing? Good to see you,
Good
Josh. How are you?
evening, everyone. How are you?
I'm doing well. I am invigorated and ready for this. I'm happy to sit down and read some text from Exodus.
This is going to be a fun one.
I know, right? I know. So I have to address something right at the outset here, Josh, because I had teased it. Uh, so I had teased it in another stream and said that Dr. Jennifer Bird might be joining us this evening, and it looked like she would be, but I think maybe not. She got tied up with some other things, so she's probably gonna sit it out tonight. But maybe, hopefully, she'll come back and hang out with us again sometime in the near
Hmm.
future. So, but yeah. Anyways, yes. Why are we reading Exodus 21 this evening, Josh? I mean, just beyond the fact that it's a supremely interesting Hebrew text.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like from an editorial standpoint, like the redaction of the chapter is probably very complicated. It's the history of the text. Uh, and there's just some really it's like it's a really cool part. It's my favorite part of the covenant code, right? Um,
Yeah,
And of course, we've been talking about slavery, and this is, one of the
yeah,
major chapters that engages with slavery. So we thought just be good to go through it so that people can kind of see how we're coming at these texts, right? And
I think it's really
again,
important.
there's nothing wrong. Um, Obviously, there's nothing wrong with having different interpretive approaches,
Hmm.
um, or theological approaches or whatever. But I feel like for the way that we come to the text, this has to be the starting point. Is coming to getting a good translation of it. If we were doing this really thoroughly, we'd be going through each of the textual notes and identifying, text critical problems, looking at the Septuagint, which I understand you did a little bit. So, but I
I've
mean,
been
like,
reading a
this
lot
is
of
an
the
important step.
Septuagint the last week, so
I believe it.
yeah,
So, but I'm
yes,
excited. I like this
yeah.
chapter.
No,
So,
it's cool. So and full disclosure, I think I mentioned this to you earlier today. I don't know if I've ever actually sat down and read the whole thing
mm,
in Hebrew, right? So
mm,
this was fairly illuminating for me, just to see the issues involved, right?
mhm.
So yeah, I don't know. With that, maybe let's get into it. If you're new here, welcome. This is the show where Josh and I sit down and read Hebrew text and discuss some of the interesting nitty gritty of the grammar. So the way this works is we just take turns going back and forth, each reading a verse, and making some interesting observations about some of the grammatical features. If you're a student in university or in seminary and you're working through Hebrew, I hope that you read along with us and that you find this useful and
Yeah,
helpful. So I mean that's really what this is all about. So with that out of the way, do you want to take the
yeah,
shorty, Josh?
sure. All right. Here we go. Ve'ele hamishpatim asher tasim lifnehem. Um, so given, what came before here, I think it's a sort of a break. Now is how I'm taking this Vav. Now these are the mishpatim. These are the judgments. I usually translate this. If you notice, it has the root shin pei tate, which is shofet is a judge, shafat is to judge. So this is a noun form. The judgments. you'll see this come up in different places, even in this passage. Like the custom. There's lots of debate about how we should actually understand this, but we'll just go with the judgments here. Now, these are the judgments, asher, that, um, tasim, you shall set. So this is a cal imperfect second masculine singular from seem, to place, to set. Lifnei hem. So lifnei is before or in front of something. Hem is your object suffix, so third masculine plural. So which you shall set before them. So God speaking, Yahweh speaking here to Moses, hey, knock, knock, knock. These are the judgments that you're going to place before them. It's an important thing, I
Yes.
think, because in apologetics, sometimes, um, there's this idea. I think what may be happening is there's some um, having a foot in both camps, maybe, where they'll say, well, were these really laws? Were these really, like normative legislation? Were these really given by God? And so, like,
Casuistic, Josh.
right, casuistic. Um, and so, if you're going with the narrative is certainly setting this up as these mishpatim, these judgments being set before them from Yahweh. So,
Yeah.
there you
You
go.
know, I didn't even archival you can't you can see. Okay. Archival Bob wants to know who this bow tie-less individual is.
Sorry,
Oh.
I'm just tired.
Oh. Tomer says prop translates mishpatim as case laws.
Hmm.
I actually just I didn't bother translate it because I'm lazy. But it's and one of the reasons why I didn't bother translating it is because there's a lot of really interesting interplay throughout various texts of the Torah with regards to their own self-identification of collections, right? The Mishpatim, the Chokim, the Torah Adonai, these sorts of things. The Sefer,
Hmm.
I think it's the Sefer HaTorah, like this sort of stuff where you see these terms prop up all over the text. Um, this is an internalized description that the people who wrote the text, who are reading the text, they understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the things I noticed in one of the, I think this is in Nidote, the New International Dictionary of Old Testament Theology and Exegesis, said that in most cases the mishpatim are actually adjudicated by the priests, which I
Hmm.
thought was pretty interesting. And there's an interesting text in Exodus 28, 15 to 30 that talks about that too, and talks about the I think it's the turban that the priest wears
Hmm.
as like the crown of the mishpatim,
Hmm.
something like that,
I
right?
mean, there's
Um,
certainly in Leviticus the main go-to people, right? They're the ones declaring
yeah,
clean and unclean, and they're
yeah,
yeah, so
right.
they're
So, and I think, and there's something else when we come to it, I'll point it out again. But there's definitely there's a cultic environment for the enforcement, I
hmm.
think, of whatever these things are. So that's fun. Um, yeah, I will continue with verse 2.
All right.
Ki tekne eved ibri shesh shanim ya'avod ubash bi'it yetze lachafshi chinom. Uh, so this key here, oftentimes we just, you translate it as for or since. It's kind of awkward as such in this case. Um, I translate it as, you can translate it as if or when. I think there's a potential that not even necessarily in a temporal aspect, but more of a conditional kind of introduction. When you buy a Hebrew slave, and
Acquire,
that
acquire, Kipp, acquire.
I actually said in my notes here, I actually said purchase. So, and
It
just so
is
everyone is
interesting. Sorry, I mean, we can come back to
no,
it if
no,
you want, but Jackson does have actually an interesting discussion for he does think it should be acquire, but it's definitely not
um,
it's not it's not going
not
the direction that most, apologists that we encounter want it to go. Um,
yep,
but anyway,
yeah, no, I can imagine. So, but I will just point out that the very first entry in the Hebrew Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament is buy, comma, purchase, and then like 60 references to follow,
yeah,
right? Okay. I feel like I'm on pretty solid ground.
pretty solid.
When you purchase a Hebrew slave, uh 6 years, um and this is one of these words, right? Avad, the verb can mean a variety of different things used in a variety of different contexts. He will work for you. I think it's appropriate to say he will be your slave
Hmm.
in this context, right? So, and then it says, and that's a cal, third masculine singular imperfect from avad. Then in the seventh, he will go out, um, and literally, uh, just free, um,
This word is so
without.
hard.
Essentially, it's which one? The first one or the second one?
Well, yeah.
Lachofi or hinam?
Well, I
Free.
think
It's
Lechovshi
lachov.
is
Yeah.
yeah, it's
I mean,
tough.
it's like it's an adjective, right? But and in this construction too, it's you know, is this descriptive of like you could translate this, I guess, as a free man, or you could just translate it adjectively as free without, literally. And the idea here is he will go out free of the obligation that he had to you without any form of compensation. So the labor is um, the payment, right, for the debt. So, yeah, I think I don't think I parsed tekne, which is a also a cal. There's lots of cal verbs in this passage, which is nice for a lot of people. So this is a cal imperfect second masculine singular verb. The root is kana, which means to acquire. Sorry,
Ah, yeah.
can also mean create, but I don't think that's what's going on
Probably
here.
not. Probably not.
So
Usually that shows up in the like in a participial form, right? A kone, like
yeah,
is
yeah,
he always describes the kone.
exactly.
Yeah.
So oh, I do have a note here. Um, no, don't worry about it. It's nothing. What else you got?
Um, yeah, so I think it'll come back up later, but this lechovshi, um, so it shows up mostly in contexts where you have people that are or should be serving as indentured servants, right? Israelites
Mm,
serving as indentured servants. So it's clear here, um, in Deuteronomy 15, it shows up, I think, a couple of times. Uh, Jeremiah 34, it shows up 4 or 5 times. And these are all contexts in which you have people that are considered to be free persons. There's some debate about this word. Nobody has a really good, at least as far as I can tell,
yeah.
has a really good handle on it. So there's an Akkadian cognate, hupshu, um,
Mm,
which, and it shows up in Ugaritic as well. Uh, sorry, I'm pulling this from memory, so forgive me if I get some of the
Sure.
details wrong, but it's this idea of like someone who is not quite a full free person, but like it's like in between a somebody that's doing like corvée labor or like a serf or something, and somebody who's like a full free citizen, at
Mm.
least in those texts. So
Oh,
is
okay.
this
Yeah.
describing returning to a state of freedom? Like this is
Or is
an
this
indication.
just to your former state?
Yeah, that as well.
Yeah.
But the thing is, where it shows up is kind of suggestive as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
um, because it shows up in these places where Israelites are debt slaves, and for one reason or another, they
Mhm.
should have or they should be set free, lachofshi, um, to this whatever this is. So let go. But yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to Tomar, who's tuning in from Edits Israel in the middle of the night, notes this that according to Rashi, to buy means from the hand of the court that sold him for a theft committed. And then he has this to say. He also writes that a Hebrew slave refers to a slave of a Hebrew. That is, a Gentile slave bought to Israel, which is interesting, if
Hmm.
nothing else. So cool.
All right.
Thanks, Tomer.
Uh, verse 3. Im begaf im
I hate this. I
begapo.
hate this
Yeah.
expression. It's
Im
hard to say.
begapo. I want to say begafo, but
I
it's
know,
not. It's
right?
begapo.
Yeah.
Yavo. Where's my mouse? There it is. Begapo yetse. Im baali shahu v'yatsa'a ishto imo. So this is very common in these like casuistic lists or sections to have key introducing an if clause in the
Team.
process. Hmm?
Oh, you
No,
mean you're talking about
yeah, I'm
verse 2?
starting up here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah,
starting up
yeah,
here.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
as like your main,
Yeah.
um, so we should say a brief word about this, I guess. Um, Akkadian texts in particular, um, but also in Sumerian, you have these long lists. If this happens, then that happens. Um, and you see them in omens, for example, like if a black cat walks across your path, then a tree will fall on your
Right.
house or something,
Yeah.
right? And what they will do very often is they will take a main idea. If a cat walks across your path, blah blah blah, but then it will say if a black cat walks across your path, blah blah blah. If a blue cat walks across your path, blah blah blah, and so on. They'll do these sort of sub um, variations on that main one. So in it's not always like this, but very often in these passages, you will have key as like your main thing. So if you purchase a Hebrew slave, 6 years he'll serve, and in the seventh he'll go out free without payment, whatever. Then you have a sub if, a sub um, case, and that one is uh, headed up by eam. So this key and then eam as like an indented, if you were to do it that way in an outline, an indented case that is sort of under the main one. So if the main one is if you purchase a Hebrew slave, he's going to serve for 6 years. If literally with his self, with his body, Gaf is like body or self, by himself, with him, it's what it is by himself. If alone, he should
Mm.
come. If he comes in alone, begapo yetse, he will go out. And the word yatsa here, this is Callan perfect, third masculine singular. Uh, this word is used in slavery contexts. So Yahweh says, like throughout Leviticus, I'm the one who brought you out, hotsia. Like I caused you to go out of the house of slavery,
Mm,
right? So yatsa
mhm.
in this context is very common with the being freed from slavery. So if he comes in alone, then he will go out alone. Um, in Baal Shahu, if a Baal, you'll see later, Baal is also a word that's used for an owner of like an ox.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's, something we should just glance over. So if you could say husband, but I mean, like, I think there's a very
If you've
real nuance to this.
if you've read, sorry,
Yeah.
she's not here, but if you've read this book, um, I mean, you will see that that those sorts of ideas are, um, I suppose, while correct in terms of intention or spirit of the text, are anachronistic.
Mm,
And I think it's really useful to make these distinctions, even if they feel artificial, just on the basis of the fact that coupling and marriage in antiquity was just so
yeah.
different, right?
Yeah.
From how it appears today. So, anyways.
So if alone he comes, alone he goes, right? He'll go out. If the husband of a wife is he, right? Very woodenly, if he is the husband of a wife, when he
Mhm.
comes in is the idea. Then Yatsa, um, she will go out, and the she here, the subject is Ishto. His
His
wife
woman.
will go out, emo with him. So this is nothing new in ancient Near Eastern law collections. I think it's in the Laws of Ornama. Can't remember which one, four maybe, but yeah, the same sort of concept. Um, that have just because a slave husband is freed doesn't mean that the slave wife is freed as well. But that's what's being described here. So if he comes, the way he comes in is the way he goes out, right? So if he comes in alone, he goes out alone after the 6 years. If he comes in married, he goes out married, right?
Yeah.
So his wife goes out with him. Then we have another eam clause. Uh, is there something else I wanted to say here?
Is that in verse 4?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'll read that one.
Yeah, I was
Um,
just looking at three to see
oh,
if there was
yeah.
something else I wanted to mention, but I think we covered
Oh,
it.
I see. Okay. Um, so, just before we continue, somebody had asked about a super chat, and usually we just hold off on those until the end. So please, if you've sent in a super chat, we haven't forgotten about you, and we will get to you. Um, and for some strange reason, when I tried to reply in the chat, YouTube rejected my comments because it thought they were spam. So,
Makes
I mean,
sense.
it if I'm spamming my own my own stream, that's it's all good, right? Isn't it?
You would think
It feels like a strange double standard at work
this
here.
is your house.
Yeah, it is. All right. Okay, verse 4. Im Adonov yitain lo isha v'yalda lo banim o banot ha isha viladeya tihya ladoneya vihu yetse begapo. I actually said it right. Begapo.
Mm.
I did it. All right. Okay. If his lord or his master or his owner uh gives to him a woman, and she bears children for him, sons or daughters, and this is a third feminine singular verb here, vialda. Um, and the subject is hoisha, the woman. If the woman bears for him sons or daughters, then the vav that follows viladeya, I think is resultative. Then her children will be for her owner, and he will go out alone. Um,
You heard
so
that correctly, folks.
you did, and we'll unpack some of what's going on here. Yitain is a kel, imperfect, third masculine singular. From the ton, the noon is a weak letter, and will often disappear. What's the word for that? The technical
Assimilate.
term? Assimilate. That's it, right? Uh,
Resistance is
Hebrew.
futile.
Yeah, it is. I was just about to say, Hebrew letters are like the Borg.
That's right.
So, yeah, and it turns into that little dot in the top there that follows. So, Adonav, you will notice here, I pronounced this a little bit differently. This is a plural form of the word Adon, and this is, I mean, ordinarily you would look at this and translate this as his lords, but in this case it's clearly singular. The verb is singular, so this is a classic instance of what's often called like the plural of majesty, or the plural of exaltation. This is an honorific, which indicates a high status. Oftentimes it's this feature is applied inappropriately to certain plural words in Hebrew in an attempt to make apologetic points. I can't think of any offhand, but I seem to remember um, something about this. And I think it was somebody had suggested once when in Isaiah chapter 6, um, the some of the plurals
Hmm.
there indicate are just majestic plurals indicating singular, but it's yeah. So these do actually occur, but you can't turn every plural into a majestic plural. So no, I think there's some interesting questions that need to be raised here. Let's finish with the verbs first. Vayalda, third feminine singular from yalad. Um, and then you've got Tihya a little bit later, which is a third feminine singular imperfect from Haya. And Yetse,
Oh,
which is a third masculine singular imperfect from Yatsa. And in this case, the prefix yod has assimilated into the root, and as a result, we have a lengthening of the vowel. Um, I'm sure Josh has a technical rationale for why that took place. I learned it once and totally forgot it and decided, yeah, I don't need to know
I
this.
don't need that.
So
I just recognize it. It's fine.
that's it. So yeah. So but I mean there's a lot going on here. I mean, in the first place, one of the things I think that's an interesting question. So you have what you have happening here is uh so the master has given a woman, we say yitain lo, to him. This is the slave, the aved. And then it says v'yalda lo, she bears to him, or maybe even by him in this instance, sons or daughters. So that is again the aved. Then the any of her children uh, literally will belong to her master, her lord. They're his. And he here, this is the Eved, again, will go out alone. He's going out with nothing. The woman does not belong to him. The children do not belong to him. They belong to his master, his owner. Even in the situation of bear in mind, everyone, like, this is debt servitude. Like, this isn't permanent chattel slavery, as you know, we ended up splitting hairs over for 2.5 hours last Thursday night.
I do
Yeah,
think it's
this.
good to point out here that, I mean, and I'm sure that in if we go down to 4b, we're going to see a third masculine singular object suffix. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So I think this is good to point out, though,
Yeah.
is what the text says here. I mean, as Dr. Kipp read it here, um, and her sons will belong to her master. So, I've run into some people that debate me on the topic of slavery, and they want to say, well, maybe this is his daughter, and he's just setting up the marriage, of his daughter to the debt slave. You know, no, the text is, if the consonantal text is correct here, it's saying her master,
Her master.
right? She is a slave. She is not a debt slave, right? Um, so she and her children belong to the master. So
What's interesting here, Josh, I think it's important to bring this up. And I'm just going to drop your screen for a second and show a picture. Because this is a good place to do it. So we have there's two manuscripts at Qumran. There's one from Cave 1,
there's
and
only two manuscripts at
that's it.
Qumran.
Two of the hundreds and hundreds of manuscripts from Qumran. One in Cave 1. Let me just get that for you. So that's 1Q2 and 4Q22 contain text from Deuteronomy 20 or Exodus 21. And this is a fragment of from 4Q22. I'm going to zoom in here and you will see it's very cool. This is like written in Hebrew script, right? So this is the bastardized Hebrew script that was invented in like the Hellenistic period and adopted by the Hasmoneans. There are some clear variations in this script from the actual Hebrew script that was used in the Iron Age or in the pre-exilic period. But what's really interesting about this particular manuscript, there's a couple things. It states to about 100, maybe 70 BCE. There are literally hundreds of fragments of this manuscript. So like we have a lot of it, and the fragments that we have cover tons of material for all the way from Exodus 6 all to I think it's uh 32. So fragments from virtually every part of the entire thing except for the first few chapters in the beginning. The other really interesting thing about this manuscript is that the text family that it belongs to is closest to the Samaritan Pentateuch,
Hmm.
which is significant because the Samaritan community preserved their texts in this bastardized Hebrew script. So I brought this up here just to show off the manuscript because manuscripts are cool, way cooler than bow ties. The Well, I mean, you can't argue,
I
can
won't.
you? You can.
I will
Yeah.
refuse.
All right. So I bring this up just to point out that on this manuscript, this our oldest copy of the Hebrew text, it actually has it's super fragmentary, but very helpfully, we have a fragment with uh viladeya with the third feminine singular suffix, not the masculine suffix.
Nice.
So, like, this is probably the original reading
Hmm.
that was corrected by later editions.
Yeah.
So cool, eh?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Anything else? We moving on?
Yeah, I think that's good. You
Okay.
covered it pretty well. All right, verse 5. Ve'im amor yomar ha'eved ahavti et adoni et ishti ve'et banai lo etze chofshi. So again, another im clause, so another like subordinate. If the slave, in fact, says, uh, how to do this infinitive absolute is always a little tricky.
Right.
But if he says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. Um, so, amor yomar, this is a count infinitive absolute from amar. This is something that you see the same root in an infinitive absolute form right next to perfect or an imperfect form, or there's lots of different little conjugations or constructions. Hey, buddy. Oh, okay. Can you go tell mommy? Oh, might be in the basement. Love you. Sorry.
That's where Josh and Megan keep their permanent slaves in the basement.
Yes. Um, so you have an cal infinitive absolute from Amar. You have cal imperfect, they're masculine singular
Mhm.
from Amar as well. Subject is the slave. So if the slave, in fact, or certainly, or
I actually
how did you
think
take it?
in this instance that yeah, so this is I've been reading infinitive absolutes like all week.
Nice.
So I've learned quite a bit in the last week, but it's a super flexible dynamic uh particle form, right? And in this case, like there's instances, Joan says that the infinitive absolute is often found in a condition clause with other nuances, the nuance of but or on the other hand. In an opposition where the nuance of the opposition is weaker in cases where a new hypothesis is introduced. So I actually think this is a case where you could potentially like translate this as if on the other hand the slave says,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So I mean we're so accustomed to translating this as an emphatic,
Yeah.
but the infinitive absolute's kind of
It's
it's kind of a
flexible.
jack of all trades
Yeah.
sort of verbal
Yeah.
modifier, right? So sorry about that. Continue.
No, no, that's great. Thank you. So it would be open quote here. This is a cow. Perfect. First masculine. I mean, first common singular from a hav. So I love et your definite direct
Mm.
object marker. My adon. So adoni, my lord, my master. Then another et. So another like a second object. My wife. Notice that isha goes to ashit, and then goes to
Mm.
ishti. um, Something I
These are
was going to say about
constructs.
that. Hmm. Um, Man, I was going to say something about that. Oh well, it is gone. And then a third, fa'et, uh, banai. So, um, you know what? Let me do this. Just because this is a good one to do. Bane is son in the plural. Banim. Um, when it goes into the construct form, you lose that mem. It becomes really, really small and becomes a little dot down here. So to create a tsere. So, if you took a magnifying glass and you held it up to that, you'd see this tiny little final mem, right? That's what you would see in that dot. Oops. And then this vowel reduces. So you get bene. And then here, the final form banai for my. This is the first plural, or the first
Suffix.
singular suffix on a plural verb.
Yeah.
So that's
my sons.
yeah.
Okay.
So Bain,
Notice he doesn't have
Banim, Bene, right?
he doesn't have much love for his daughters.
Yeah. I mean, we're less inclined, I guess, given that the text distinguished Banim from Banot up here, to say that it just means children, because it can just mean children, and maybe that's what it's just a shorthand. But
It's, and I think like it's a pledge, right? It's an oath. It's maybe this is a formula.
yeah,
So, but you know,
yeah.
yeah.
So he says here, and this is the end of the quote, lo etze chofshi. I do want to point that out. Notice that this chofshi, this, even though it doesn't happen all that often, this is a kametz chatuf. So it's an o, sounds the short o, because this is a silent shava. This is a CVC syllable. So it's a closed, unaccented syllable, which needs a short vowel. So chof, chofshi. Because we got to get nerdy a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, the point here is that the slave, the text tells us if he's given a wife by his master, the wife and the children belong to the master. So if the guy says, well, I love my master and my wife and my children, I will not go out free. Like there's this idea here among some apologists that, well, he's going out to save up money, right? To pay off the debt for his wife and his child or his children, or he's just going to go wait out their contract or something. These are chattel slaves, right? These are houseborn. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Tomer included a Sarna quote. Do you want to see the Sarna quote?
Yeah.
Yeah. It must have been a fairly frequent occurrence that the slave felt comfortable and at home in his master's household, and also formed an emotional attachment to the bondwoman and to the children that he had begotten through her. In addition, he did not relish the prospect of freedom in poverty. These considerations might lead him voluntarily to surrender his right and personal freedom. In such a case, he had to make a solemn declaration to that effect.
Yeah, this is why there are lots of scholars whose work I absolutely adore most of the time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand why they're doing it, right? I get it. Sarna's JPS commentary, right? Like it's not like it's but the same with Jeffrey Teague, right? Like his Deuteronomy commentary in the JPS series. Like he's gonna paint that Deuteronomy 25, 11, and 12 woman grabbing the testicles in the best possible light. And
You kind of got to, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I understand it, but I think we should just be honest about what appear to be theological commitments.
I
Um,
think so.
and I think that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
So, if you're done, I
yeah,
noticed
yeah.
that Pat raised a really, really good question at a very opportune time. How do you guys explain the origins of these texts? Everyone knows these texts were originally written in Greek and then translated into Hebrew, right? I mean, everyone knows that, Josh. I've been
Even that one
I,
person.
I I've been told this like every day in the last week, and you know, one of the ways we do know that this is a Hebrew text that was translated into Greek is because of this bugaboo we call the infinitive absolute,
Hmm.
right? So this is this is the verbal form. It's in verse 5. Do you want to just bring it up here again? Um there you go. Uh Amor yomar. Sorry, amor yomar. Very often the infinitive absolute, which is the first form of the verb there, is like it looks nominal, looks a lot like a noun. I think the definition, even though it's not um it's not real solid, calls this like a verbal noun. Um, it appears with great frequency as paired with another verb from the same root, and most often it's used as an intensifier, right? Like this is surely going to happen. You are surely going to do this. Um, I am definitely going to do this. That sort of thing. So I spent a lot of time over the last week looking at infinitive absolutes and seeing what happens to them in Greek. I
Hmm.
learned a few things about this along the way too. So I learned that most scholars suggest that this is like by the time of like the piecing together of the Torah, this is already kind of an archaic form. We actually have it attested in uh, in Ostraca from Arad from the 6th century
Hmm.
BCE in Hebrew, so outside of the Bible, right? Um, and within the biblical text too, occurs much more frequently in texts that scholars consider earlier than in some of the later literature. By the time you get to Qumran, it's really rare. By the time you get to rabbinic Hebrew, that they just don't use it anymore at all, right? So it's definitely like a feature of the language that appears to be old. It's archaic. Now this makes some sense because what happens with the Septuagint, which was written in, you know, maybe as early as the 3rd century. I think these Greek texts developed over a longer period of time and probably well into, the 1st century CE. Um, so at this period of time, this makes sense where the translators of these texts and they encounter this form oftentimes don't know what to do with it. And so they will do creative, sometimes creative, mostly awkward, different things with it. The thing I saw most often was that they'll just turn the infinitive absolute into a noun. And it results in this really awkward expression. Like a translator like that who wasn't quite as savvy as the actual Greek translator of this text might have said, uh if the slave says speech, I I love my, something like that, right? It turns out wooden and awkward and
Hmm.
weird. Well, as I was looking at it, at this text, I wondered what is happening with the Greek text of this passage and what the Greek translator did with this infinitive absolute in verse 5. So the translator said "heonde epokrites," which is the aorist passive participle, "hepe," the aorist subjunctive, "hopais." But if the slave in response might say, So it looks to me like there's some recognition on by the translator here that he understands these are both verbs at least, right?
Hmm.
Um, but still doesn't seem to understand how the infinitive absolute works. So he changes his text by adding another different verb in there, right? And it the sentence that he's produced doesn't really make a lot of sense in the context. Because like he's responding to the situation. Is
Hmm.
that maybe what you can read from this? I don't know. Um, but it's certainly not a response to any form of speech that precedes it, which is usually how we understand this, right? So all that to say, this is, here's an example of an infinitive absolute construction with a an active verb. Um, which again shows us it's yet another instance where we can see that the Greek translators are, grappling with this text and trying to figure out what to do with it and devising different strategies and solutions for it, demonstrating the direction of the translation here, right? There's
Hmm.
only one way it goes. You can't turn these awkward Greek expressions into much more sensible infinitive absolutes working in the other direction.
Hmm.
Does that make sense, Josh?
Hmm.
Okay. Sorry, I'm done.
I wanted to clarify um, something. So I think it was Joel that asked the question in the side chat.
Oh,
How do we know that the woman and the children can't be bought? That's not what I'm saying. Um, the woman and the child are alienable, right? So ostensibly, uh, they could be sold, right? The point that I'm trying to make is that most of the time when I hear this idea that the guy's going to go out and save up his shekels, he's going to come back and pay off this woman's debt.
hmm,
There is no debt upon which her slavery is contingent. Certainly, there's no debt that the child has, right? Um, and this would be a different scenario if the master had had a child with the slave woman, right? And you can see this in other ancient Near Eastern law collections. There are certain rights that are usually extended to even the woman, to the slave woman. So in the laws of Hammurabi, that slave woman is to eventually be freed. And but but um, so part of the issue here, I had something that I was going to say. Um, so like theoretically, he could go out, uh, but there's no requirement on the part of the owner of this woman and child to like. There's no redemption price. You can see this sort of thing in the other law collections where if someone is, I know I'm Joel. I'm sure it was not your. I'm sure that was the lack of clarity on my part. Um, um, like in other law collections, you can see that a woman who is or a girl who's taken as a pledge cannot simply be alienated, right? The owner or the master of that pledge can't simply marry her off to one of his sons or to somebody else. He has to get permission from the father who is the debtor before he can do that. So pledges, debt slaves are not alienable in that way, right? So the fact that um, he's able to give her and she's not free to go. uh Certainly this is very consistent with what we see in the wider ancient Near East, that she and the child are permanent chattel slaves. So it's possible that she could be she and the child could be sold to the man if he went free and made a bunch of money and then came back. But there would be no obligation legally for the master to sell, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he seems to have noted that. Thanks, Joel. Also, he says that Runga notes this construction being normal in classical Greek responding. He said, and I think Joel also helpfully pointed out to me earlier this week that the Greek translator in Exodus, seems to have a pretty solid understanding of what he's doing. So I would, yeah, it looks to me like this is, this tracks. It's still it's still not entirely what's the word I'm looking for? It's not
It doesn't
entirely
line up
faithful to
well.
it doesn't line
Yeah.
up with the Hebrew, right?
But
So
what
I
is what
which
does
is
this
the
guy Joel know about
I don't
the
know.
Septuagint of
I don't know.
Exodus 21? It's not like he's got some article or something out in the new
He,
volume.
one would think he wrote a PhD on the Septuagint, but what I me, yeah. So
Highly recommend that article, by the way. It's kind of a
listen,
pricey
it's
book, but it's worth it.
yeah, yeah, right. So we only got like 5 minutes. We got just a handful of super
Yeah.
chats, but I wondered we've got a satuma at the end of verse 6. Should we maybe just finish verse
Yeah, we
6
can do it.
and call
We'll just be
and
quick.
do chats and then call it a night? Okay. Vihigisho Adonav El Ha Elohim Vihigisho El Hadelet O El Ha-mezuzah Verotza Adonav Et Ozno Bamartzea Va'avado Le'olam.
That one was a tongue twister.
That was a fun one. All right. Vihigisho occurs twice. This is a hifil. Um, Perfect third masculine singular from Nagash with an object suffix, third masculine singular o, and it's a vav conjunctive, which is an inverted form performing the same uh performing the same duty as like a vav consecutive does with the perfects, right? So we tend to translate this as an imperfect aspect in expression. So at this point, then his Lord will lead him to God. Ha Elohim, literally, the gods. And there are a number of times in the Hebrew Bible where the definite article accompanies this ubiquitous plural form Elohim, which we just ordinarily translate as the person of God, interchangeable with Yahweh. But I have a tendency to think that there are instances in the text where this may reflect like a fossil or a calcified form of an ancient tradition, when people were, you know, um, actively worshiping more than one god. So oftentimes I will just translate as the gods. His Lord will bring him to the gods, and he will bring him to the door or the door frame, and his Lord will bore his ear. Rotsa. It's a simple cal perfect third masculine singular. Again, this is the Vav conjunctive, and it's an inverted form. He'll bore his ear with an awl, and then literally it just says, and his slave for life, um, forever, but olam. Most frequently in the Hebrew Bible, especially when it's applied to human beings, is just for your natural lifetime.
So I think I took this as an infinitive construct. I mean,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
an infinitive
yeah.
construct. I'm sorry, a
Eh,
perfect. Uh, so
with
and
a did I
he will serve
well,
him.
I was being sloppy.
It's the vowel pointing is
It's weird.
confusing.
Oh yeah,
You know,
I think you're
I
right
think we
there.
can reconstruct it.
You're right there, man.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's
He will be his slave. Yeah, that's better
the
for the duration
olam,
of his life.
which could just mean for a couple days. We don't know. It's all a journey.
We don't know.
Olam has that great versatility. It could be like
It's
10
got
minutes.
that versatility, right? Could be a minute, could be 1,000 years. I mean, it could be
Uh,
that too, Josh. It could be 1,000 years. He
because
will be his slave for 1,000 years.
it's whatever you want it to be. You know.
That's right. That's right. That's all we're doing. We're just yeah. All right, I got a few super chats. Do you want to
Awesome.
see those?
Yeah.
Okay. Master Macatier. I hope I Macheteer. Maybe it's the Master Macheteer. That's
Mm.
cool. I used to own a machete. It was fun. I bought it in Brazil. Um, Exodus 4:24-27. I have seen some translations say God tried to kill Moses, and some say God was about to kill Moses. Seems to have a different meaning. So I think the difference you're seeing here is in whether it was a failed attempt or whether it was an interruption of his action, as I understand it. Are you looking it up, Josh?
Yeah, just pulling it up.
It's such a weird passage. It's pretty wild. Um, Exodus 4.
Yeah, we probably don't have time to.
Probably not, I'm afraid. Um, is it because he is it because why he
I mean, it's an infinitive,
is it because is it because
and
of
he sought
uh
to put him to death.
oh yeah, okay, there we go.
So it's Bikesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to think about
Yeah.
it.
I it's a great question, but um unfortunately you're on the stream where the hosts have to have to sit back for 6 or 7 days and think about these things before
Very,
they
very
decide.
deeply like this. We say
Yeah.
things like, "What is Tove? What is
Yeah.
Tove?"
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, Master Machete here. But I mean I will say I think yeah, what you're pointing out is true. Like there's a difference here. What's actually happening in the text is another question. And some of these issues are not so easily resolved either. So it's possible it could just go either way. Which is why both of us feel like we have to think about it. Sorry. But thank you for your very generous question. Chris, for $5. I once asked Kent Hovind in one of his live streams if he accepted the dating of any of the biblical manuscripts, and he essentially said no.
Well,
Um,
I think we can all agree that the Bible was written in English, okay? And it's you evolutionists that think, well, you're probably sitting there thinking about those 14-foot whale penises, okay? I'm here to help.
that's what they made the manuscripts out of, wasn't it? No, they had to do something with the
Gotta do something.
14-foot whale penis.
It will never
So,
die.
but thank you, Chris. Thank you very much for the question or the comment. Sorry, I guess it was a comment. But we feel my day is brighter for it. I don't know about you,
Indeed.
Josh. Okay. Revilla 178 for 5 Canadian dollars. It's awesome to see you around these days. Thanks, Revilo. Sorry if off topic. How much ancient Hebrew literature do we have outside the Bible?
I read
Um,
that as sorry if Old Testament.
I did
I
too.
was like,
I totally
I don't
and
understand.
it might, it might be. So I think so. This hinges on what you mean by ancient, because like we have a lot. You could say that the massive amounts of rabbinic literature from the medieval period is ancient. that dates to between like the 2nd and the 10th century CE. But like we have piles of manuscripts from the Judean desert as well. While I tend to set a lot of my focus when it comes to the Dead Sea Scrolls on copies of Jewish scriptures, this only forms maybe 30% of the entire collection. We have tons of texts written in Hebrew and Aramaic that, nobody knew of before. And then you have texts like the Book of Jubilees or First Enoch or the Aramaic Levi document or the Book of Ben Sira, which was originally written in Hebrew. There's quite a lot of ancient Hebrew literature, and scholars are certain that we don't even know all of it, right? Like there are texts that were out there that we just don't have anymore. So I would say, if you're defining ancient even just as pre-medieval, we have quite a bit. So yeah,
If they're
there
talking
you go.
about like, before Qumran, you have like the Gezer
We have none.
calendar, you have oh, okay.
Oh, there we go. Yes. No,
Yeah, I mean
that's true. We have these.
you have a
Yeah.
handful.
Yeah.
The
I mean, I guess you could.
Arachika,
I even you
Solomon.
could call like the Canaanite inscriptions are they're not Hebrew, but they're pretty close. Like the Misha Stele and the Tel Dan inscription
Mhm.
are written in a language that's for all intents and purposes you know basically the same as Hebrew with some pretty minor variations. So yeah, so that was fun, guys. Thanks for hanging out. It's 10 after 6. Got anything going on this week, Josh? This weekend? Next week?
I don't even know. I'm teaching
You don't
Hebrew.
know.
That's the only thing
Yeah, man.
I got.
Yeah.
I got an awesome
So
class. They work
I
very
I, I
hard.
see one of your students has shown up a little late, but it's good to see you, Vishanti. So sounds like you're having fun. It sounds like everyone's having a blast
Yeah. Seems like it's good.
in your Hebrew class. I've heard very good reports, and your mythology course is
Yeah,
out.
that's right. That's right. Just
MVP
went up.
courses.
It's pretty cool.
So a couple days
I
ago.
have
Yeah,
arrived, you know?
you have
I
you
made
have
it.
arrived. So, and
Now all I
it
gotta do
sounds
is
like
write
you
this
can.
Leviticus commentary, Be
That's
there,
it, and then
top of the
and then
world.
you're done, right? So, I've heard you can actually like do the course in maybe even just a couple of days. Um, so wow, eh? Who knew?
It's not an 87 parter like yours?
No, 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 it's not. But yeah, that's awesome. Everyone, please go buy Josh's course and then buy it again if you can. So, I mean, everybody's got like multiple credit cards these days, don't
Yeah,
they?
yeah, yeah, just spread it
Or
around,
not? Just yeah, yeah, exactly. Uh,
Flex.
yeah. So, I on Monday. I'm pretty excited. On Monday, I'm actually going to be on R and Raw's channel talking about Jesus mythicism.
Nice.
So, we'll see how that goes. Uh it should be fun though, guys. It's going to be fun. And
I like hanging out with
um
her.
I've been told Chrissy Hansen's going to be there as well. I was pretty sure I saw her in the chat earlier. I don't know if you're still here, but Chrissy, if you are, you can confirm or deny that I will see you on Monday. And then I think it's in 2 weeks we have our June installment of Diablo Critics coming up. So
Nice.
it's gonna be awesome. Cool. Well, thanks guys. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Um yeah. So keep reading, everyone, and be cool. Be good. See you
See you
later.
in 2 weeks.